everyone, this is Julie from Heart to Hand Stamping. Thank you so much for joining me today for this tutorial. This project I have for you today is a little bit special in that I've designed this child's Christmas card to be created for a sponsor child that you may have in your life. And the reason this card is a little bit unique for that is that in this little snow globe that's the focal point of the card, you're able to place any stamped image in there that is unique to your country. So I live in Australia, so I have a little kangaroo and a little koala, which is very cute. There's also some sequins and some little bits of glitter in there that children love, as it's a shaker card. But also this card has several layers of cardstock, which makes it a very sturdy card and a very good card to send overseas. I've decided to divide this tutorial into 4 parts just to make it a little easier for you to watch. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you do decide to create this card for perhaps a sponsor child you have in your life, or if not, a special little one. So enjoy part 1. Okay, let's get started. Well, as you can see, I've already done some prep work here just to save some time on the video, but it's very simple. All I've done is I've taken a piece of Seaside Spray cardstock and a piece of Whisper White cardstock, and I've simply cut each of them in half. And then I've taken them to my paper trimmer and I've trimmed 1 centimetre off the top and 1 centimetre off the side off all 4 pieces. And now we're ready to cut our hole. And I've used the layering circles dies for this, and I've taken the plain circle that measures 6.7 centimetres in diameter. And all I've done is I've taken my 2 pieces of Whisper White cardstock. I've measured up 4 centimetres and put a mark, measuring 2.5 centimetres and put a mark, and then I've just placed my die on there and cut those 2 pieces together. I've come back, laid them on top of my Seaside Spray, use my pencil to mark that hole, and I've laid my die over the top and cut those out as well, and keep those circles for later. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to emboss our Seaside Spray cardstock, and I'm using the Stylish Scroll embossing folder for that. I really love this folder, it's so pretty. Now when we're embossing our first piece of blue cardstock, we're going to emboss the top right hand side of the cardstock up here. So when you're lining up your embossing folder, don't put it right up to the top of that fold, because when you fold it over, you're going to get this straight edge, which we don't want. So just make sure when you're lining it up, you actually line it up with the pattern that's in the embossing folder, like that. And then you're going to take your second piece and we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to do it on the bottom left corner. And again, you want to line up your embossing folder with your cardstock. So I'll go and do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. I have done that now. I've got my 2 pieces of Seaside Spray nicely embossed. And now we're going to do some tearing to start creating our layers. Now the way we're going to be layering this is we're going to be taking our piece of Seaside Spray, that will be our bottom piece, the piece that you've embossed at the top right, that will be on the bottom. Then our 2 Whisper White will be in the middle, and then our second piece of Seaside Spray that we've embossed on the bottom, that sits on top. Okay, so the bottom layer we're going to leave. We're not going to do any tearing with that one. But the next layer, so the Whisper White layer, we're actually going to be tearing from, do you see where my embossing has finished? That's where I'm going to be tearing from, and I'm going to be tearing right across my card here. It doesn't really matter how far down you tear, as long as you don't tear your hole. You want to keep that with no tears in it and just avoid it a little bit. So I will come in about here and just start tearing my cardstock, being careful to miss my hole. Like that, and that's our first or our second layer. Now our third layer of Whisper White, we're going to tear right from this corner. So you're going to come from this corner and you're going to tear in the opposite direction this time. It's a little bit hard to start in the corner. Need your nails. Okay, again, try to avoid, well, you need to avoid that hole. Like that. Just set those aside for a minute. So here we have tearing going on there. And then for our top layer, we're actually going to tear off where it has finished, where our embossing folder has finished. So I'm going to come along here and I'm just going to tear around that hole sort of thing, like that. There we go. And now we have all our layers torn. Right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to add some embossing powder to our Seaside Spray embossing. So we'll just set these aside for a minute. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to bring in some paper to put underneath to catch my embossing powder because I don't want to waste any. Pop that under there. And I'll start with this piece, and we're just going to take our Versamark stamp pad, and you're just very lightly going to go over your embossing. You just want to catch the top of your embossing, and we don't need to go all over this. We only want to emboss the part we're going to see, which is that little V we kind of created with our tearing. So just the top and around here. Okay, and once we've done that, we're going to take our shimmer white Stampin' Emboss powder. I love this shimmer white embossing powder, it's beautiful. So what we do is we just take this and we're going to sprinkle some on, like that. Okay, now see where I've got some on the inside? That's fine, it just adds to the randomness of it, but I do like to take a little bit of that out just so those top bits are more highlighted. So I just take a soft paintbrush and just remove embossing powder where I don't really want it, but it's okay to leave some there, it's fine. And you might like the look of that, and you can leave it if you like. It's just what you prefer. So, okay. That's that one. Now we're going to be doing the same with our torn piece. Now we just heat emboss this, and we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, I've just finished heat embossing my two pieces of cardstock, and now we're going to add a little bit of embossing around the torn edge as well. And we just do that by taking our Versamark and wiping it around that rough torn edge, like that. Like that. Pop a little bit of our embossing powder on our paper, and we just run it into that. So you're not going to see that bit we haven't embossed on the side, so you only need to really do this top part. And I'll heat emboss that and be right back. Okay, I've finished preparing my Seaside Spray card pieces, and now we're going to focus on our Whisper White card pieces. Now we're going to take this piece and set aside. This piece we're going to be doing some stamping on later, so we'll just set that piece aside. But this piece we're actually going to be doing some background colouring, and the way I like to do that is I take a silicone mat, and I'm going to be taking our Seaside Spray ink and a sponge, and I'm just going to sponge that randomly all over the mat. By doing it this way you get random colour, which I like. sponge that all over the mat. And then we're going to take a water spritzer and we're just going to spritz that with a little bit of water. And then we're going to take our Whisper White and we're going to lay it into that ink like that. And that looks really nice. I really like that. I actually don't think it needs any more. Okay, so I'm now going to dry this off and move to the next step. Okay, I've now dried my Whisper White cardstock, and the next step is to take a little bit of smoky slate ink and do a similar thing, but we're not going to use as much ink, just a little bit. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to spritz it with water, and I'm a little bit away because I don't want too much water. And again, I'm going to lay my cardstock onto the silicone mat and pick up some of that ink. And there you can see I've got a little bit of smoky slate in there as well. I'll pick up a little bit more at the top. That looks good. Okay, so I'm going to dry this off and move on. Okay, that's all dry now. So for the final step on this piece, we're going to be doing some stamping. I'm going to be using our background handwritten stamp set. Really love this script, particularly for kids. It looks like a really fun sort of script. And I already have my stamp on my block. And we're going to be just popping that stamp over here. So we don't need to ink the whole stamp, just sort of that side there. So I'm taking our Delica Silvery Shimmer ink pad, beautiful silver ink pad. And I'm going to ink up a stamp. And I'm just going to stamp this over the top. Like that. And now we have some script as well going on in that background. Now all I need to do next is apply some embossing to the edge like we did on the blue. We just take our Versamark, again same way, apply the Versamark, and we add our embossing powder and heat set, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're almost there with our background. We've now got all our pieces embossed. So we've got our back piece. I've actually Versamarked and embossed this plain piece as well. That goes next. I've heat set the edge here. That goes on top. And then we have our final piece that goes on top. Now there's just one other piece we need to prepare. And you just need to take a piece, one of the pieces that you tore off, the Whisper White, and lay it on top because we want to cover this bit that's not embossed. So lay it on top, and then what we're going to do is make sure we tear around that hole. So I'm just going to eyeball that and have a guess and tear it like that, and just have a look and see I needed a little bit more off. How are we going with that? That looks pretty good, I think. So that's, you can see that's now clearing that hole. And now just to add a little bit more texture, I want to use a different embossing folder this time. So I'm using the Subtle Dynamic embossing folder, which is really nice. It just gives a nice linen type texture. And we're going to lay that piece in there and emboss it. And I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I've done my embossing. Look at that beautiful texture that's in there. Now to lift that texture out a bit, I'm just going to add a little bit of Seaside Spray ink using my finger dauber. To do that, you just put a bit on, and I like to take the excess off in my lid so I don't have too much on there. And we're just going to lightly go over our embossing like this, just so it picks up the top of that embossing so you can see it a little better. I'm going across the embossing Okay, try and keep your embossing, your inking a little bit random. It looks nicer that way. Now all that's left to do is we're actually going to emboss this edge as we've done on all the other pieces. And I'll be right back. And there we have it. We have all our background layers ready to go. So we have our back Seaside Spray, our next Whisper White layer, our inked layer, our top Seaside Spray layer, and then we've got our torn piece that will go over the top. So I hope you can join me for the next part, which will be stamping and colouring our images.